Let's join Dad Arthur, Mom Ellie, their children Max, Lily, and magical dog Barley in their new adventure in the Dream Garden. In this episode, the family must venture into a world of haunting whispers and invisible threads to save a young boy from a giant shadow puppeteer who feeds on the fear of being judged. The Dream Gardener and the Web of Judgment. Part 1. The Watchers in the Dark. The transition from the field of the flowers of lightness to the next corner of the Dream Garden was jarring. Usually, the garden felt like a vast, breathing cathedral of nature, but as the wander wagon rolled forward, the atmosphere turned cold and clinical. The vibrant colors of the flora began to bleach into a pale, ghostly gray, and the air grew still. Too still. It was the kind of silence that made you want to check if your clothes were straight or if you were walking too loudly. Arthur pulled the van to a halt near a grove of skeletal trees. "The map is acting strange again," he muttered, tapping the glass of the dashboard. Instead of a pulse, the golden map showed a flickering grid, like a screen being watched by 1,000 hidden cameras. As they stepped out, the sound of their boots on the pale grass felt unnervingly loud. Crunch, crunch, crunch. "Dad, why do I feel like I need to whisper?" Lily asked, staying very close to Ellie's side. "Because we are being measured, little one," a weary voice replied. Celestian stepped out from behind a tree, but he looked different. His radiant cloak was pulled tight around his shoulders, and he kept adjusting his collar nervously. "We have entered the territory of the Ocularia weed, also known as the Web of Judgment." He pointed upward. High above, stretched between the dead branches of the grove, were millions of silver, gossamer threads. They weren't like normal spider webs. They glowed with a faint, electric blue light, and nestled within the intersections of the silk were thousands of unblinking, glowing eyes of all shapes and sizes. They didn't move, but you could feel them tracking your every movement. "This nightmare belongs to a boy named Ben," Celestian explained, his voice hushed. "Ben has a beautiful voice and a heart full of stories, but he is terrified of the what-ifs. What if they laugh? What if I look foolish? What if I'm not good enough? That fear has manifested as this web. It has turned his dream into a silent theater where the audience is made of expectations." "How do we reach him?" Ellie asked, squinting up at the canopy of eyes. "You must leave the safety of your wagon and walk through the arch of expectations," Celestian said, gesturing to 2 trees that curved together like a doorway. "But be warned, the web doesn't just watch, it clings. It makes you feel the weight of everyone's gaze until you can no longer move as yourself." Arthur looked at his family. "We go together. Don't look at the eyes. Just look at each other." Barley gave a low, protective huff. His golden fur seemed slightly dimmed by the oppressive atmosphere, but his tail gave a defiant wag. He stepped through the arch first, followed by the Wheelers. As they crossed the threshold, the world shifted. The garden disappeared, replaced by a vast, echoing hallway that felt like the backstage of a giant theater. The floor was polished to a mirror shine, and every footstep echoed like a drumbeat. Boom. Echo. Boom. Echo. Suddenly, Arthur felt a strange tugging at his limbs. He looked down and gasped. Fine, sticky blue threads were attaching themselves to his wrists and shoulders. From the darkness above, the thousands of eyes flared with light. "He's the leader," a chorus of whispers erupted from the walls. "Is he doing a good job? Look at his posture. He looks unsure. He's going to fail them." Arthur's back stiffened. His flannel shirt suddenly felt like a heavy, restrictive tuxedo that was 2 sizes too small. He found himself trying to walk perfectly, his movements becoming wooden and robotic. "Arthur, stop!" Ellie cried out, but she was struggling too. The threads were wrapping around her waist, pulling her toward a giant, flickering spotlight that had appeared out of nowhere. "The great explorer," the whispers mocked. "But she's lost, isn't she? Look at her hair. Look at how she fumbles with her compass. She's just pretending." Ellie stopped, her hand frozen halfway to her bag. She felt a desperate urge to fix her hair, to look right for the invisible audience watching from the shadows. "Max! Lily!" Arthur called out, his voice strained. The children were being herded toward a line on the floor. The web was weaving a transparent barrier between them, a wall made of should be and must be. Max looked at his hands and saw they were covered in ink-black threads. "He's too loud," the eyes whispered. "He should be quieter. He's annoying." Max shrank back, his face turning pale. The vibrant, energetic boy was disappearing behind a shroud of self-consciousness. Barley stood in the center of the hallway, looking up at the thousands of judging eyes. He growled, a deep rumble in his chest that vibrated through the floor. Unlike the humans, Barley didn't have a reputation to protect. He didn't care if his fur was messy or if his bark was too loud. But even he could feel the stickiness of the silk beginning to tangle in his golden coat. "We have to find Ben," Ellie whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's at the end of the hall, on the stage. We have to reach him before the web turns him into a permanent statue." They began to shuffle forward, their movements no longer their own, as the audience of eyes leaned closer, waiting for the first mistake. The Dream Gardener and the Web of Judgment. Part 2. The Puppeteer of Shadows. The long, echoing hallway finally opened into a massive auditorium that defied the laws of space. The ceiling was lost in a swirling vortex of violet clouds, from which millions of glowing blue threads descended like a rain of frozen electricity. At the center of it all was a lonely, circular stage bathed in a harsh, unforgiving white light. There stood Ben. The poor boy was frozen mid-stride, his arms jerked upward by the thickest cluster of threads. "We have to reach him!" Ellie shouted, but as she moved, her own threads tightened. Tug. Snap. Hum. The sound of the silk stretching was like a high-pitched violin string about to break. From the darkness behind the stage, a shape began to rise. It wasn't a spider, but something far more unsettling. It was a towering, two-dimensional silhouette. The Shadow Puppeteer. It had no solid body, only a shifting outline of jagged darkness that seemed to soak up the light around it. Where its head should have been, a series of ceramic-like masks floated in the air, rapidly clicking and changing. Click. A mask of a frowning teacher appeared. "Your effort is mediocre," a booming, hollow voice echoed through the theater. Click. A mask of a laughing peer. "Look at his shoes! How embarrassing!" Click. A mask of a disappointed parent. "We expected so much more from you, Ben." With every click of a mask, the shadow puppeteer jerked its elongated, spindly fingers, and Ben was forced to jump, to twitch, or to bow. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a marionette dancing to the rhythm of other people's opinions. "Stop it!" Max yelled, trying to run toward the stage. But as he stepped into the light, the shadow puppeteer turned its attention toward him. Click. A mask of a stern judge appeared on the shadow's face. "A noisy child." The voice vibrated through Max's chest. "Children should be invisible. Why are you making such a scene? Everyone is staring at your clumsiness." Max froze. He looked at his feet, and suddenly the threads around his ankles turned into heavy iron chains of blue light. He felt a hot flush of shame creep up his neck. He didn't want to move. He wanted to disappear into the floorboards. Arthur struggled against his own tuxedo-like constraints. "It's a trap, Max! It's feeding on your fear of being judged!" Arthur looked up at the shadow puppeteer. "Hey, look at me! I'm the one you want to talk to!" The puppeteer shifted. Click. A mask of an expert engineer appeared. "Arthur Wheeler, a man of nuts and bolts who can't even fix his own family's path. You think you are a leader? You are just a tinkerer playing pretend while your children sink into the mire." The words hit Arthur like a physical blow. He felt the threads wrap around his throat, tightening every time he tried to argue. The more he cared about the shadow's opinion, the more power the shadow had over his muscles. Lily was huddled on the floor, her hands over her eyes. "They're watching," she whispered. "Thousands of eyes are watching us fail." The shadow puppeteer drifted closer to Ben, its shadowy hand reaching out to place a final, permanent mask of silence onto the boy's face. If that mask touched him, Ben would never speak his own mind again. He would only ever say what he thought others wanted to hear. Barley, who had been standing in the shadows of the front row, let out a low, growling rumble. He saw his family paralyzed. He saw the boy disappearing. But Barley didn't see a judge or a teacher or a critic. To Barley, the shadow puppeteer was just a big, dark smudge that was making his humans sad. Woof! Barley bounded onto the stage. The white spotlight hit his golden fur, making him look like a spark of sun in a cold room. The shadow puppeteer turned its masks toward the dog. Click. A mask of a mean dog catcher. "Bad dog, out of the light! You're shedding everywhere! You're ruining the performance!" Barley didn't stop. He didn't tuck his tail. He didn't feel embarrassed about his shedding fur or his loud bark. He tilted his head, let out a happy, goofy sneeze, "Achoo!" and proceeded to sit right in the middle of the stage. He began to lick his paw with great focus, completely ignoring the towering shadow and the thousands of glowing eyes in the rafters. The shadow puppeteer's masks began to click faster and faster. Click, click, click. It was confused. Its power relied on the victim caring about the mask. But Barley didn't care. To a dog, a mask is just a piece of wood, and a shadow is just a lack of light. "Look at Barley!" Ellie gasped, feeling the threads around her waist go slack. "He's not playing the game. He's just being a dog." The shadow puppeteer let out a frustrated shriek, its silhouette flickering like a dying candle. It lunged at Barley, its spindly fingers reaching for his neck. But Barley just rolled onto his back, wiggling his legs in the air, inviting the monster to a game of play. The threads connected to Arthur, Ellie, and the kids began to glow with a different light. A soft, golden warmth. The magic of the dog's pure, unbothered heart was starting to flow through the silk, changing the nature of the web. "We have to help him," Arthur said, his voice finally breaking free of the tuxedo tightness. "Barley's holding the stage, but we need to break the puppet master's hold on Ben." Arthur looked at Barley, and as if sensing the need, the dog's golden aura expanded. The stage began to vibrate, and the harsh white light started to turn into a soft, inviting amber. The battle for Ben's voice had reached its turning point, but the shadow puppeteer still had one final, terrifying mask to reveal. The Dream Gardener and the Web of Judgment. Part 3. The Voice of the Heart. The shadow puppeteer shrieked, a sound like tearing parchment and feedback from a broken speaker. Its two-dimensional form flickered violently as Barley continued to wag his tail, his golden presence acting like a massive anchor of reality in a sea of pretend. The thousands of eyes in the rafters blinked in confusion, their glow dimming as the power of their collective gaze began to wither. Look at him! Max shouted, his voice cracking but growing stronger. Barley doesn't care if he's doing it right. He's just being Barley. As Max spoke, the heavy blue chains around his ankles shattered into sparkling dust. He took a bold step toward the center of the stage, and for the first time, the threads didn't pull him back. The shadow puppeteer turned its shifting masks toward the boy, but it was losing its grip. Its elongated fingers trembled. In a desperate final move, it reached into the deepest darkness of the theater and pulled out a mask that was smooth, featureless, and terrifyingly white. It was the mask of the perfect stranger. Click. If you do not please them, the puppeteer's voice boomed, now sounding like a landslide of cold stones. You will be nothing. You will be a blank space. No one will remember your name. No one will look at you at all. The stage went pitch black, except for the tiny, shivering figure of Ben and the golden glow of Barley. The silence was absolute. It was the ultimate threat of the web, the fear of being invisible. But Barley wasn't finished. The golden dog stood up and let out a soft, rhythmic huffing sound. Huff, 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 as he began to nudge Arthur's hand with his wet nose. As he touched Arthur, the golden light from Barley's fur didn't just shine. It began to flow. It moved up Arthur's arm, through his chest, and out toward the others. He's giving us his focus, Ellie realized, her eyes widening. He doesn't see the audience. He only sees us. The magic of the dog's pure, uncomplicated love crystallized. From the golden mist of Barley's aura, two objects began to materialize. They weren't made of metal or glass, but of solidified sunlight. First, a small circular mirror drifted into Arthur's hands. It was the mirror of sincerity. Unlike the judging eyes in the dark, this mirror didn't show what others saw. It showed the heart. Second, a pair of glowing shears drifted toward Max and Lily. They were the pair of scissors of indifference. Not the cold indifference that ignores others, but the brave indifference that ignores the fear of others. Arthur, the mirror, now! Ellie commanded. Arthur stepped into the path of the shadow puppeteer. He held the mirror of sincerity high, catching the harsh white light of the theater and reflecting it back at the shadow. You aren't a judge, Arthur roared. You're just a collection of guesses. You're just the noise we make when we're too scared to be ourselves. As the reflection hit the shadow puppeteer, the monster's masks began to crack. Crack. Snap. Shatter. The face of the stern teacher, the mocking peer, and the disappointed judge all crumbled into gray ash. In the mirror's reflection, the terrifying silhouette was revealed to be nothing but a hollow cloak of thin, fragile silk. Meanwhile, Max and Lily ran toward Ben. The boy was still suspended by the blue threads, his eyes filled with tears. Ben, it's okay, Lily cried, reaching out to him. Listen to Barley. Listen to the sound of your own heart. Max and Lily took the scissors of indifference and began to snip threads. Snip. Zing. Pop. The threads didn't just break, they dissolved into colorful confetti. You don't have to be perfect for them, Ben, Max said, cutting the threads from the boy's wrists. You just have to be real for us. We're your audience now, and we already love the show. With a final triumphant snip, the last of the blue threads fell away. Ben slumped forward, but Arthur and Ellie were there to catch him. The boy took a long, gasping breath. The shadow puppeteer let out a final, pathetic whimper as it shrank down into a tiny, harmless shadow on the floor. The thousands of eyes in the rafters flickered once, twice, and then went out like snuffed candles. The theater began to dissolve. The walls of expectations, the spotlights of judgment, and the heavy velvet curtains of shame all melted away. Ben looked at the Wheelers, then at the golden dog, who was now wagging his tail so hard his whole body wiggled. I thought I had to be what they wanted, Ben whispered, his voice small but clear. The only thing the world needs from you, Ben, Ellie said softly, is the person you are when no one is watching. Ben smiled, and as he did, he began to sing. It wasn't a rehearsed performance. It was a simple, beautiful melody that rose from his chest like a bird taking flight. As the music filled the space, the gray auditorium was replaced by the vibrant, starlit beauty of the dream garden. The Ocularia weed didn't just die. It transformed. The sticky blue webs turned into delicate, glowing silver threads that hummed in tune with Ben's song. At the base of the trees, a new kind of flower began to bloom, the starbell flowers. They were tall, elegant blossoms that didn't look at anything. They simply glowed with their own inner light, ringing out a soft, confident chime with every breeze. Celestian appeared from the shadows of the silver willow, his cloak now shimmering with a pattern of stars. You have taught him the greatest secret of the garden, the gardener said, bowing to the family. The web of the world is only as strong as the importance we give it. Today, you have traded 1,000 judging eyes for one honest heart. Ben began to fade, his song lingering in the air as he returned to his bed in the waking world, finally ready to sing his own song without fear. The Wheelers walked back to the wander wagon, their footsteps light and free. There were no threads pulling at them, no whispers in their ears. Arthur climbed into the driver's seat and looked at the golden map. Next up? Max asked, his old energy fully returned. Next stop, Arthur agreed, turning the key. As the van rolled forward, Barley jumped into his favorite spot by the window, his head out in the wind, his ears flopping happily. He didn't care how he looked. He was just a dog, in a van, on an adventure. And that was more than enough. Good night, travelers. Sleep tight, and subscribe to join the Wheelers family on their new adventure.